Hi everybody. Back in March, I made a video of a full layout tour of my HO scale layout, the Great Lakes Eastern. It was a huge success. It brought in a ton of views and subscribers, and thank you to all that watched it and subscribed. Now today we're going to take a tour of a different layout of mine. Many of you know, and many of you may not know, I also have an N-scale layout, which is behind me here in a shed. So today we're going to take a tour of my N-scale Great Lakes Eastern Alpena Division Lake State Railway Model Railroad. Here we go. If you want to check out the layout tour of my HO scale model railroad, hopefully I'll remember to put a link in the description or maybe a tag up above. Alright, let's go ahead and get started here. Alright, I'm going to start by going over a few stats and facts of the model railroad. It's an N-scale model railroad. The track I used is a Code 80 Atlas flex track and Atlas turnouts. The layout is about, just under 3 foot deep by, let's see, I'm going to measure the studs on the wall for this one. Let's see, 32, about 9 feet long. The layout is entirely DC powered, and it's a single main line that represents the trackage coming up and through Alpena, Michigan, serving a couple industries such as the Lafarge cement plant and specialty stone products, which is a quarry just on the outside of Lafarge. Alright, we're entering the shed. As you can see, there's all kinds of items in storage and tools over here. But this wall is dedicated to the N-scale model railroad. Again, it's called the Great Lakes Eastern Lake State Railway Alpena Division, and most of the layout is, like I said, that of Alpena, which starts right about in here and then heads all the way down to the far end until you see the quarry at the very end with all those trees. Single track main, a couple of sidings here and there. There's one right there. Couple over here by the power plant. There is a reversing Y that is wired up, and as of right now is not working properly, but it is working to the point where I can move cars around and create trains manually. What it was originally meant to represent was the route coming from the Tawas area north into Alpena, or from Alpena south to the Tawas area, where crews would switch hands to either continue the train south to Bay City, Michigan, or to pick up a train that was northbound towards Alpena. So that's why this end of the layout is just woods and countryside. Again, this represents any kind of woods or hills or farms that are south of Alpena. Behind this short piece of backdrop, which is made out of simple foam board, less than $1 at Walmart to create this entire sky, which is just foam board painted blue and then some clouds and a storm down there painted on. There's a double track behind there. One was intended to store a train, but it's a little on the short end. I think this train that's sitting on the layout right now with this borrowed steam engine would fit. But if I want to store any locomotives or cars that just simply don't need to be seen, they can go back there. Otherwise, just the single main line, which follows the prototype Lake State Railway. And prior to 1992, it was the Detroit and Mackinac Railroad. There's a cemetery right here. A little hobo camp back in the corner. You have an old B&O boxcar. Little farm scene here. Got some corn. This corn is from JTT. This is technically HO scale, but I think it looks perfectly fine in N scale. Got some cows behind the barn. The era and time of year shares that of the HO scale layout. It's mid-80s through the early 2000s, and the season is early July through early October. That's why you see some fall colors mixed in here. Also, something that this layout shares with the HO is the little ice cream truck, the marina, and this boardwalk. Oh, and also this band shell here that I scratch built out of some basswood. Right here is one of the Walthers oil derricks that is currently in a couple of pieces because I believe a mouse ran over it a couple winters ago and I just haven't put it back together. It did function, and if I remember, I might try to dig up a video of it actually in motion. Although it runs pretty fast, I need to somehow gear it down. Typical farmhouse. And this barn right here is a wood kit from Blair Line. And I believe the cows are Woodland Scenics. So is the cemetery. And these little tiny people swimming here at the beach. Cement truck here heading into town. You'll notice that the edges of these roads are curled up a little bit, and that happens in the winter. So again, this layout is in a shed that's not climate controlled, and usually in the winter time when it gets very cold and dry, it causes the road to peel up, and it's just made out of thin styrene plastic. Typically I go along and glue it back down with some white glue or wood glue or something. I just haven't done that yet this year. Otherwise, the layout holds up just fine out here. A lot of the buildings and rolling stock and things like that I have to take inside and store them in a tote because little critters like to come on the layout and play with certain items. I don't know why, but some items they leave alone and others I have to remove, and once I remove them, they don't seem to bother the layout at all. The body of water out here is Thunder Bay, which is part of Lake Huron. See a couple of people out there in canoes or kayaks. The little stream or river here is the Devil's River that runs from Osneek, Michigan, which is where this highway, US 23, actually crosses the railroad. And then that river flows north towards Alpena, goes through a couple of lakes and whatnot, and eventually ties into the Thunder Bay River, which is represented here on its way out back into Thunder Bay and therefore Lake Huron. Now there's several items on this layout that are also on the HO scale Great Lakes Eastern. Hello, Jenny. The cell tower, the old buildings downtown, the Dairy Queen, the power plant, the water tower, and the cement plant over there. The layout's footprint isn't overly large. Like I said, it's somewhere between 2 and 3 feet in depth. Just under 3, I would say. By about 9 feet in length. And the main line of track is only down on this part of the layout. So to make it a little bit of a longer run, it's got this dog bone shape. Bends up in there like that and comes back out. Which is nice because it brings the scenery forward and takes the train back and through the scenery as opposed to just being out front here. Oh, by the way, these backdrops that I mentioned a bit ago, there's the artist. It's a scratch-built bridge going over the Thunder Bay River there. That covered bridge back there represents that's found in what used to be called Duck Park, and now it's Sportsman's Park, which is in Alpena, just off the Thunder Bay River. That's actually made out of porcelain. I think we picked that up on a whim in Frankenmuth years ago. Most of the buildings on this layout are from Walters or Bachman. A couple of them were hand-me-down, so I'm not exactly sure who made those. And of course, like I said, like this one here, I scratch-built it. And then most of the trees on the layout are either from JTT or Woodland Scenics. The entire layout is wrapped in plexiglass to keep the dust and the wind and the bug spray off the layout. A couple panels are removable, like the front one. You can see it sitting down there, which obviously makes accessing the layout and filming it much easier instead of you trying to see it through glass, and dirty glass at that. It's nice to be able to remove it. This panel right here also lifts out. There's the reversing Y that just needs to be rewired, I think. Something came loose underneath years ago. It kind of still works, but kind of doesn't. So for the most part, I just scoot the trains along. I've noticed as I get older that putting these cars on the track is becoming a little bit more of a struggle, so I might have to get me one of those ramp tools to aid in that. Got a little barge right here with some coal in it. I don't know if you can see them, but there's a couple of fishermen right there. Or swimmers. Or both. And I got a small lake freighter. Older style. Parked here next to the silos at Lafarge. There's another cement truck. And there's more of Lafarge. Now in this layout I created it as a backdrop building, because I didn't have the space to do the whole structure. I haven't named this boat yet, but it's painted up in the cream and gray colors that many of the cement carriers on the Great Lakes are. A few years ago I did a video where I had to repair this smokestack because the little mice stored their seed inside of it. Then they couldn't get to it, so they chewed a nice big hole in the side. Now the boat is one of those items that gets put in the tote during this winter months. The freighter and the barge there are both Sylvan kits. Those little barges are real quick and easy to put together. In fact, that was my first modeling project that I did after I had my stroke 2 years ago, almost to the day. So it was part of my therapy. And now we're down to the end of the layout. A few years ago, shortly after I started my YouTube channel, I showed this end of the layout as its own thing. Believe it or not, this detaches from the rest. It's just clamped together underneath. And the tracks are just lined up with regular track joiners. But it does have its own power pack right there. It's currently disconnected so that there's no short between this one and the main one up there, which is a Tech 2, an old Tech 2 from MRC. It's more than enough power to handle this layout. There are a couple of powered turnouts in the back part of the layout, which are also controlled by that transformer. This was designed to be a portable layout that could ride along in the camper that you see parked right there. However, I have a new idea in the works for some sort of portable or camper train. So this might end up becoming a permanent part of this layout. In fact, at this point, I don't see why not. And there'll be a future project, maybe soon, showing a new idea that I have for a camper train. As you can see, it is a complete loop of track. There's a turnout there that connects it to the rest of the layout. And it also features the only tunnel on my layout, on my N scale layout. The HO layout has a tunnel on the layout B component of that model railroad. And there it is, the Great Lakes Eastern Lake State Railway Alpena Division in N scale. I did start up that coal train that was parked, being pulled by the steam engine. It is running a little fast because it's actually my brother's engine. I think it's from the 80s. He picked it up at a train show last year. So I have to run it fast for a while before it gets broke in, and then I can slow it down after about 10-15 minutes. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, if you want to see a tour of the HO scale layout, which is much longer and more involved than this because the layout is much bigger, I'll put a link in the description if I remember, so please feel free to check that out. And until next time, take care everybody. Happy 4th of July and enjoy your summer. We'll see you later.